Welcome back to Arise News. This is our special Independence Day coverage. And still with me in the studio are our guests talking about the Nigeria Independence Day, the economy, and the future. So quickly now to talk about some of the things we've been talking about, which is real federalism, making states more sustainable. Let's talk about sort of diversifying our economy, because I think the biggest reason why we've become so dependent on the federal government has been because of the oil revenues. The last couple of years with the, I won't even say crashing of oil prices, because that was projected. We knew that oil prices were at some point going to go down. With that happening and sort of it still being a shock to Nigeria, and then there's now been this whole conversation about diversifying the economy and the diversification policy, which was also a big part of the president's speech today. He's talked about some of the initiatives in the different states, the fertilizer distribution, the investment into rice. What do you think are still some of the things that, at the end of the day, some people still believe that we're just only playing lip service to this diversification policy and that we're not being aggressive enough as a nation? What do you say?
So a couple of things. One, just on, I mean, how we ended up where we did, just to clarify, was not just only the fall in oil prices, but also specifically in Nigeria's case, a significant loss of about 600,000 barrels a day. But what that did, I mean, that shock, I mean, of course, forced, sort of like a government to restrict imports, as we are aware. But fortunately, one of the good things this administration did, in my view, was also consciously promoting agriculture in the around incentives and things like that, and we have begun to see the benefits. I mean, there has actually been investment in agriculture. Unfortunately, for certain types of agriculture, particularly when you talk about cereals and annual crops and what have you, you can't see immediate short-term benefits within a growing season or two. And anecdotally, what we're seeing is significant increase in agricultural output. I mean, there's a small story that a senior government official that told me last week about how a governor of one of the northwestern states actually called for a meeting, and the farmers pretty much said, sorry, we're busy harvesting our crops. It's unheard of in Nigeria's history for like the governor is calling you and you say you're busy, but they were genuinely busy. And then there was a story of about maybe, I forget the number, like maybe 40,000 farmers, not 40,000, but a significant number of farmers in the north who were able to pay to go on Hajj, without requiring government subsidies. So these are some of sort of like anecdotal evidence, but more important.
I mean, according to the president also, he says 43.9, almost 44 billion naira has been released to the CBN and 13 participating institutions, and 200,000 smallholder farmers from 29 states of the Federation are benefiting. Over 233,000 hectares of farmland being cultivated for rice, wheat, maize, cotton, soya, poultry. So these are really incremental. One of the things, though, is there does need to be almost in a much more aggressive, at an aggressive rate, because like we've said, this government, one of the biggest challenges they've had is pace.
Yeah. But also, I mean, again, one good thing about sort of this again, this is not to get all populist, but a good thing about this sort of agri-led type diversification is just the sheer number of people that the sector employs. I mean, like oil and gas at its very best will not employ, I don't know, let me throw a number out there, 200,000, half a million people?
Yes, half a million people.
Agriculture,
I'm not even sure up to half a million.
Yeah, agriculture, on the other hand, because of its very nature, will employ a lot more people. That's a lot more people that you don't have to worry about becoming extremists or what have you. Plus, also, you really cannot develop an industrial economy without sort of like a pretty
You have to feed yourself. Hungry people can't really become an industrialist.
So I think these are all positive things. We do need to check the details of implementation. We do need to pay attention to things like sort of like, secondary activities like processing and storage, because what happens when everybody starts producing enough? We do need to be sure that we have consistency across the agricultural value chain, and not just to like invest in growing, and then we're down to talking about wastage and so on and so forth, because you do need to get the crops in the right place, in the right form, at the right time. So these are things that need to all work hand in hand. But as far as I'm concerned, these are, sort of positive developments.
I still agree totally with him, with Kamar, but I also believe that it's early days yet, even in the agricultural initiative. We are just scratching the surface. True. The potential is immense. It's good that we have started, because before now we didn't do anything. It's good we have started. Even what we are doing right now is threatened by three main factors: the herdsmen and the farmers' clashes. That is a major threat. Because I know in certain areas, certain states, smallholders don't go to farm anymore.
Wow.
They fear being killed, being decapitated, and their wives being raped by violent herdsmen who may have been Boko Haram militants escaping from the northeast and then teaming up with herdsmen to maim, to rob, and to kill. They also kidnap. And therefore, it's driving smallholders away from their farms. We have to cure that immediately. The rules are bad all across the country. Bridges are collapsing. Federal rules are bad. If the Minister of Works, I believe, is overburdened, he may either become Minister of Power or Minister of Works and Housing. That portfolio should be split. Because neither in power nor in works/housing is he effective. Because he's overburdened, and he's a particularly efficient and diligent person.
So let me actually bring up what the president says there. So the president says, power remains a huge problem. As of September 12th, production power reached an all-time high of 7,000 megawatts. Government is increasing its investments, clearing up the operational and financial logjam, bedeviling the industry. We hope to reach 10,000 megawatts by 2020.
Can you move it? Can you move that power? That's important.
I was just going to say that transmission is a big bottleneck in the whole power story.
So once again, there is this, it's about in Nigeria, it's about trickling down of that power. The biggest challenge we have in storage, as much as agriculture is growing, there's issues of processing and storage. All these things depend on power. You're now saying that we have a power ministry that is, unfortunately,
is overburdened.
Is overburdened. And we need to say that.
Yes.
And I think that's also part of the challenge, is that people haven't been saying that. What is it that now needs to happen in the power sector? I mean, the president has admitted that they've come short on power. This continues to dog every single government.
Yes.
57 years into our independence, we don't have power.
And we are aiming for 10,000 megawatts. It's a no-no. But I also know that today we are actually generating about 40,000 megawatts.
But that's not being distributed.
But it's private.
Of course.
It's generators. Otherwise, you cannot use 7,000 megawatts to run this economy. It's not possible. It is you and I, the generators in our homes, in our offices.
That is running this economy.
That's what's running this economy. In the offices, the huge, giant generators in offices, those are the things running this economy. You see, when we're talking about generation of power, we're actually talking about generation, electricity generated by government or by the central body that generates electricity.
By the grid.
By the grid.
So based on this, is Nigeria just a country that will have to just forget about the grid?
No.
Is that what we have to be for us to really grow? Because as long as the next generation continues to expect power, and as long as 2020 is our target date for generating 10,000 megawatts, do we now need to be honest with the next generation, honest with ourselves to say, look, guys, this is just not one of those countries that power is going to come to you. You're going to have to find your own power.
So the real question is not so much whether grid or off-grid or what have you. It's really about the cost of power. You know, Chief Omokhodion talked about 40,000 megawatts, which is probably, I mean, I think that number sounds about right. The problem, though, is you're talking about, power that you're generating at about 30, 40 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, that is not the kind of, at that cost, you cannot be competitive. In a global economy. You can't be competitive. If you're not talking about, like 6 cents, 8 cents per kilowatt hour of power, you can't be competitive. So you need to, so to your point about, being, like honest with the next generation, better find a solution. It's not about all the honesty in the world is not going to get you there. What we need to figure out is how to crack this problem. Now, there are obviously, sort of like thoughts around, yes, maybe it's not going to be one massive grid. Maybe it's just going to be a lot more efficient distributed power around, sort of like, like also with like renewables and what have you. But the critical thing is to get that cost of that power down to like sort of like the six cents.
The single digits.
Yeah, because that is when, so if you can get generator power for 6 cents, people are not going to complain that, nobody cares. Like if diesel is free or whatever, or you're handing out generators for free and diesel is free, and I'm able to generate the power for that kind of amount. That's really what the issue is, as opposed to whether it is coming from a grid or coming from wherever. And
I think largely power also I think it has started moving away from the exclusive list. You see, it should go to the concurrent list, concurrent legislative list, so that the states, as well as federal government, can invest in power. And you can invest in power, and it can also be off-grid. You set up your own grid system.
Which is what we're doing mostly. We're all off-grid.
Yes. Bring the cost down.
Yes, bring the cost down.
If you're going off-grid, the point I was making, sorry, is if you're going off-grid, whether it's off-grid or on-grid or whatever.
We don't care. We want power and we want it to be cheaper than this.
Precisely.
And that's the only way we can do it, manufacturing, and we can create more jobs.
Exactly. A kilowatt of power that comes into your house, you quite frankly don't care whether it comes from animal dung or from solar or from gas. You just want power. What you really care about is that it is flowing, and it is flowing at a rate that you can use it. And it makes sense.
But you know how it feels. In the night, you probably wake up and you look through your window and you see that your meter room, there's no NEPA light, the generator that is working, you just have a headache. Exactly. But sometimes when you see the NEPA light is on, whatever, the disco light is on and the generator is quiet, you say fine.
But why is that? Why is that? Sorry, no, that's a good point.
That is a good point.
It's not so much, fine, there's the issue of the noise pollution, but quite frankly, what you're thinking about is the cost of, it's like, this one costs me, whatever, 6 cents, and this one costs me 40 cents.
Which is what you want more.
So,
sort of staying on the issue of the economy, one of the things that the president also highlighted was the country. So I'm going to go to the paragraph where he says, the country has recorded 7 consecutive months of lower inflation. Naira rate is beginning to stabilize, appreciating from 5.25 per dollar in February this year to 3.60 today. So this, broad-based economic growth is leading us out of recession, and then he's talking about the state excess crude account, budget support facilities, stabilization of fund release. Really, the very erratic and interesting foreign exchange policies, experiences we've all had this year. Obviously, the last few months, the Naira stabilized. Yesterday, we reported another injection from the CBN of dollars into the economy. What is, right now there is a lot of push and pull around the Naira dollar rate. The government is trying to control. How is this beneficial, and what are some of the things that we need to start to do differently when it comes to this, which is going to lead us into actually some of the conversations we're going to have around debt and how we're swapping our debt. But really, for me, it's sort of like looking at this year in foreign exchange. What are some of the big wins and the big losses, and what do we need to continue to do to win more?
Okay, so to know what we need to do, we need to know where we're coming from, right? So, the two big things that have happened, as far as I'm concerned, that have sort of helped stabilize things. One is clearly that government has more money.
Thanks to the
increase in oil revenues.
Prices, yeah.
So oil prices have gone up. I mean, production has stabilized at about 1.8 million barrels a day. So there's more money to.
And also, I mean, that also goes
with.
back to security, which the president
Yeah,
did talk
so
about,
we'll talk about that in a bit. But so one is that they have more money, so they're able to sort of intervene a lot better, or at least back the currency a lot better. But also the fact that they have tacitly admitted the rates by allowing this importers and investors and exporters window,
yes.
Which has allowed, it's created a lot more liquidity in the market. I mean, the president was very specific about the volume of liquidity. He talked about the fact that we've seen 7 billion. That tells you, in a sense, that you have allowed an opening in the space, and the market has responded favorably, and
yes.
That's good
locally
news.
and globally.
Yeah. So and again, it's a mutually reinforcing thing in the sense that foreign investors are then more comfortable, and then so that there's more money coming into the economy. That's sort of where we are. So it gives us an insight into how we should be thinking about it going forward. Clearly, we should not mess around with this sort of like importer and exporters. We should not do anything that will send jitters to the market. What the market has always asked for is stability. Not
predictability.
we just want to know. We'd also be able to see.
We want to be able to project. We want to be able to run our businesses.
So I think that is very important. I mean, would I advise government to keep intervening at this rate? I think that probably needs a bit of a rethink. Because sort of like with oil prices, you just never know. Nobody, not the greatest experts in the world, will not predict oil prices. So you want to think about how you want to manage your foreign reserves,
yeah.
and I think they're thinking about that, which we'll talk about when we come to the debt issue.
Yeah, I'm quite optimistic, and I think too that the stability in the foreign exchange market has helped a lot. This time last year, we had about 12 different exchange rates. The same time last year,
Sure.
And everybody, I think it was going haywire, but it has gradually reduced to about 2 or 3 now, and about 2 or
5 officially.
I mean, there's probably
But INE and the NAFEX are pretty much the same.
it's about the
rates,
same.
so.
Yes, and so there's stability and there's predictability. We thank God that the Niger Delta boys have quietened down. The oil market is recovering. But I heard Dangote say recently that please, you should not recover too soon, so that we do not lose our sense of discipline that we have acquired.
And this new mission we're on.
So the economic review that the president did is quite correct. But I'm very bullish about an initiative that is on its way. The Development Bank of Nigeria.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold on to that bullish initiative, because that is a good one to come back on. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with our guests talking about all things Nigeria, the economy, and our independence. Keep watching.